Hi, I'm Craig Hayes, one of the shepherds at Netherwood Park Church of Christ. And we're here today to present a lesson to keep us in touch with each other and to help us communicate and adapt to our new world as we know it for the next few weeks. So I want to start with talking about one of my favorite prophets in the Old Testament, Elijah. I like him because he's human to me, despite all of the incredible power that is demonstrated by God through him. He has highs and lows just like most of us do. And this passage is from when he's out at Horeb, immediately after he's fled, after he destroyed the prophets of Baal and is running from Queen Jezebel. So here we go. From 1 Kings chapter 19. Then he came there to a cave and lodged there. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, "What are you doing there, Elijah?" And he said, "I've been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the son of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, torn down thine altars, and killed thy prophets with the sword. And I alone am left, and they seek my life, to take it away." So he said, "Go forth, and stand on the mountain before the Lord." And behold, the Lord was passing by, and a great and strong wind was rending the mountains and breaking in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of a gentle blowing. And it came about when Elijah heard it that he wrapped his face in the mantle and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave. And behold, a voice came to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" What I love about this is Elijah is looking at all the turmoil and all the activity when he was fighting with the prophets of Baal, when he was getting engaged with all these activities, when he heard all the large noises. He expected to see God there. But God spoke to him when everything stopped, when everything slowed down. And I'm kind of jealous of Elijah because when he got to this point, he got to hear that still, small voice, the voice of God speaking to him in quiet tones. And what has happened to us for the first time for many of us is we have been blatantly handed a chance to cut out the daily distractions of normal life. But even after all that was cut out, it's still easy for us to miss the opportunities to listen for that small, still voice. We spend our time instead worrying about what might happen. We spend time worrying about the things that we're missing out on, that we're not getting to do. Or maybe we're not worrying, but we're getting buried in social media, or we're getting buried in all the projects that we've put off for so many years that we finally have time to do. Not that those things are bad. But in the midst of all this, we've been given a blessing. And we need to take some time to hear that small, still voice. But it won't magically happen unless you stop to listen for the voice. Take time for prayer, for study, and for meditation on God's will. Paul writes in Philippians chapter 4, "Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God." And the key is be anxious for nothing. Use your prayer to help remove that anxiety, and you do that by turning control over to God. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 6, "For this reason I say to you, do not be anxious for your life as to what you shall eat or what you shall drink, nor for your body as to what you shall put on. Is not life more than food, and the body than clothing? Look at the birds of the air, that they do not sow, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, and let your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not worth much more than they? And which of you by being anxious can add a single cubit to his lifespan? And why are you anxious about clothing? Observe how the lilies of the field grow. They do not toil, nor do they spin. Yet I say to you that even Solomon in all his glory did not clothe himself like one of these. But if God so arrays the grass of the field, which is alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the furnace, will he not much more do so for you, O men of a little faith? Do not be anxious then, saying, what shall we eat? Or what shall we drink? Or with what shall we clothe ourselves? For all these things the Gentiles eagerly seek. For your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. And now listen to verse 34. Therefore, do not be anxious for tomorrow, for tomorrow will care for itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. We need to turn over control of our fears, of our anxieties, over the things that we cannot control, to God. Also, while you're in a stop mode, ask God to open your eyes to see the world in a new way, to see your neighbors in a new way, to look for new areas of service, to look for new direction for you, to look for a new direction for your family. This is a rare and precious opportunity God has blessed us with. It's unlike anything in my lifetime. It's an opportunity to slow down enough to let God help us redefine our priorities. It's a time to slow down enough to reach out to an uncertain world with the good news of a very certain God. It's a time to pause, a time to stop for a moment and listen for that small, still voice.